rolling.
All right, I'm going to use my hand so you can see the thread. This is a dark blue thread. What I did was I unraveled a little bit because I'm ready to start my next bobbin. So it's unraveled. I'm going to open up the shed. I'm going to put that in. Again, it might be a little hard to see, but that's the idea. I really don't want you to see the beginning and the end. I also did the same thing to the other end. I unraveled a little bit. So what I'll do is when they bring them in, and I'll put my hand underneath here a little bit, you can see where they're going to overlap a little bit. Close the shed, and then what I'll do is I'll end up cutting that off. I'm just going to throw the shuttle a couple of times here. And then I like to cut those now. So you can still see it a little bit, but once it's washed and dried, that overlap will disappear. Okay, here's a close-up of the threads that I had unraveled when I was putting them into the open shed. Overlapped them, as you can see here, they were overlapped probably about 1.5 inches, and then placed into the shed, and when it was closed, obviously they got squished together. And here, as I move these away, you can see a sample of the fabric. That's the edge where the two threads were overlapped after it has been washed and dried. So it's a technique that I like to use most of the time when I'm doing my weaving. Don't always do a lot of heavy yarn, but in this case I was, and it was the best way that I could find to join the two ends. I know there are other ways out there, but I just want to give you an idea of what it looked like after the product was woven. Here's another sample of overlapping. This is a lot finer thread. This is actually an 8-2. I'm at the end, ready to add my next bobbin. In this case, I'm going to tuck it in. I can put it on the top if I want to and trim it now, or I can put it on the bottom and trim it later. Now, I don't want it too tight, just the way it is. I'm going to take the shuttle, pass it through. The other thing I do is I always tear the ends. They're not cut. It gives a little feathering effect. So as you can see, I'm trying to go as slow as I can and have it overlap. Okay, on that one. And now I'm going to continue to weave. Well, we have a little tightness on there. I don't like that. Sometimes when you add another thread, I notice that the tension's a little different in the bobbin to get started. And that's what happened on that one. Takes a little while to get that nice and even again. You can still see a little bit of it, kind of where it started. I can trim that off if I want to. And you can zero in on that, take a little closer look. And it's kind of hard to see, but it's there. So another idea, another way of adding your thread, and later on I will cut that one on the bottom, the piece of thread on the bottom. One thing I like about weaving with thick and thin yarn is when you go to overlap, you can overlap basically anywhere. As I said earlier, I normally tear the yarn rather than cut it if it's possible. And in this case, I'm at the end of the one bobbin. So I'm going to put the one in, and as you see, I'm not putting it on the edge, I'm putting it just kind of in the middle, because that's the pleasure of using thick and thin. And in this case, I'm going to overlap about 2 inches, maybe 1.5 inches. Well, actually, it'll go down to 1.5 inches. I beat that in, and then I'm going to continue weaving. And in this case, another way of hiding the thread is when you do a pattern. If you're doing tabby, it's more difficult to hide where you start and stop. But when you have, this is a broken twill, or shaft broken twill pattern, it's a lot easier to hide the beginning and the end of your thread when you're adding a new one. So again, that's kind of the trick with the thick and thin, one of my favorite yarns to weave with. The other thing you can also do, see here, this yarn is thick in the reed. It's 10 threads per inch. This is a thinner yarn. So that's another way. If you weave with thinner yarns, you can often hide your beginning and ending threads with a finer yarn. So that's another option for you. Again, another one of my tricks. I'm sure someone else thought of it too.